right, welcome to the Wholesome Wave FM Tracks interactive tutorial on manual data entry. Thanks for joining us. My name is Katie Merritt. I'm a research associate at Wholesome Wave, and I'll be presenting on this webinar along with my colleague Elizabeth Atwell. The goal of this presentation is to provide some hands-on guidance on how to enter market data at the website. While FM Tracks, both the app and the website, have a large range of useful functionality, today we'll be focusing exclusively on manual data entry for entering any past data into FM Tracks. We hope this will be of particular help to those market managers that have been recording their data on pen and paper, and that they can quickly upload this information into the website. Before we begin, I'm just going to cover some quick logistics. So here's our agenda for the training. We're just going to jump right into demonstrating how-tos of manually entering data using the FM Tracks website. We'll go over entering and editing individual and aggregate transactions on the website, as well as submitting post-market reports. This is designed as a hands-on presentation with lots of time to answer questions as we go. So again, feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll try to address them one at a time. Just before jumping into that demonstration, though, I am going to put up this slide with more opportunities to ask questions over this fall, and I'll put this up again as well. So real quick, we are going to do just a couple of polls to better understand our audience today. So the first question we're putting out is, have you used the app to enter data? And this will just give us a good gauge on whether or not people have used the app or if they're using the website primarily. All right, we've got most of our answers in. And so it looks pretty split. Half of you have used the app and half of you have not. All right. Our next poll, and so this is about specifically the FM Tracks website. Have you used it for manual entry of transactions, post-market questions, both, or neither? All right, so the majority of you have been using it for both. That's great to know. And then some of you have not been using it at all, and then the other groups are sort of split. All right, so we'll be covering all of those pieces. Then just knowing that. Oh, sorry. So then our next question, we're just curious how many of the people on the phone or on the call right now are going to be continuing to enter data, or how many have really closed out your season and you have a backlog of data to enter. All right, that's great to know. All right, and so that can bring us to our last question, which is just about the amount of data that you have maybe backlogged to enter, or whether or not you're current with entering your data into FM Tracks. Okay. All right. Well, we got the majority of the answers on that one. And so, again, it is mixed. Okay. Thanks for bearing with us. Those polls were just to make sure that what we go over today is not redundant and is useful to as many people as possible. Great. So now we're going to be jumping into the demonstration, and we're just starting from the FM Tracks website. I've already logged in, and so you can see my dashboard here. And for those using pen and paper forms at the market, just a general overview, the website allows you to enter in transactions, it allows you to edit them, and enter redemption information. And that's what this presentation is really going to focus on. But if anyone has questions about customizing your market profile, adding additional data collection points for your market, answering the metric questions, or running reports, you can send in your questions and we'll try to get to them towards the end. Again, I mentioned that we are also hosting a second interactive tutorial on running reports using FMTracks on December the 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So now that we have searched for our demo market here, Collard Greens, we're going to click on the manual entry icon to get to the page to add individual transactions. So you'll start by entering the date that the market occurred. And if you're tracking customers using an FMTracks ID, enter this information in the box labeled Customer Identifier. If you're not tracking customers, click the box Anonymous. Select the payment type and enter the amount. And if you offer multiple incentives, select the appropriate one. All of these options are customized from your profile page on the FMTracks website. And notice the red line if you haven't submitted required information. And lastly, we'll go ahead and enter the last 4 digits of this customer's EBT card in the point of sale ID and then press add. Just scrolling down, you can see if you've made an error, you can easily edit or delete the transaction by pressing the pencil icon or the trash can. So before we move on to aggregate transactions, I just want to pause here and create an opportunity if anybody has questions about manual entry to go ahead and put them in now. All right, if some come in, we'll go ahead and handle them, but right now I'll just keep demoing through the aggregate transactions. So if you don't have individual level data, you can enter the relevant transactions from the day in aggregate form. And this is the minimum data required for each market day. So again, we'll enter the date and the total number of transactions represented in the aggregate entry, along with the payment type and amount, and incentive type and amount. Again, you have the opportunity to edit or delete, just like we did for the manual entry. So again, I know this is pretty basic stuff, but if anybody has any questions about aggregate transactions, please send it in. Otherwise, we'll just keep moving forward and talk about the transaction log. The transaction log is a newer feature compared to the rest of the website. It allows you to edit the transactions in an easy manner, and right here you can see that you can run a search through a period of time. It can do 90 days at max. So once you've selected the dates and you've viewed your transactions, you can easily edit or delete them. So to delete a transaction, click on the trash can icon. You'll be asked if you're sure you want to delete, and you can click yes. That line you'll see is now highlighted in gray instead of black, and hovering over the icon to the right will tell you who deleted the transaction and on what date. We did get a question in about why it's limited to 90 days, and that was a choice because, for instance, if you were performing the search on a network, 90 days might be a very large number of transactions, especially with individual level transactions. And we didn't want to create a situation where the page took too long to load for individuals, and so we did reduce it down to 90 days so that it's a more manageable size. Oh, sure. So another piece of that was a question about, is there a way to see change over multiple seasons? And I think the best approach for that would be utilizing the reports section of FMTracks. Yeah, we'll just go ahead, and if we click in here, we'll just run it. This is going to be for Wholesome Waves' entire network. And you can see how you can look at trends over time. Because we're in the first year of our FINI grant, we don't have multiple seasons in here, but you know, as you go to next year, we don't have a 90-day limit on this, and you would be able to see how you compared just by looking at, you know, clicking on dollars or incentives. Yeah, and seeing the different totals. We did have a question about whether or not the pages, the transaction log, can be printed. And that's actually a really great question. I haven't checked that myself. I'll go ahead and give that a try as soon as this webinar is over. If there is any way that we can format it to make it more amenable to that, that's something we'll definitely talk to our developer about. Just one last note on this report before I go back into the transaction log. I just wanted to emphasize again that next month we will be talking a lot about reports. We'll be showing you, once you export these reports, just a couple even simple Excel tips that will allow you to easily manipulate the data, where you could see totals by month, by week, by market, however you'd like. So we have a question about aggregate transactions. And it's, do we put in each transaction that was made or the dollar amount for the day? And what aggregate transactions will allow you to do is essentially, let's say, all your Snap transactions. So if you have 30 at the market totaling $400, that would be your total for that single day of Snap. We wouldn't want you to be entering this in duplicate. So for instance, once you've entered it in aggregate, there's no need to then put each individual transaction on here. Otherwise, you'll have duplicate records. All right, I think that brings us to the questions on entering transactions for right now, but please, if you have any additional ones, we will be able to come back to that as well. So just jumping in right now, oh, sorry, one more. Sure, so there's a question about it, sort of having some of your day be an aggregate transaction and some be individual level transactions. And as long as the totals between the two come out to being the correct total, that is okay. Individual level data is preferred, but you know, at the market, different things happen, and we understand. So really, it's about making sure that you don't duplicate any efforts. I will note, though, for anyone with anyone participating in the RCT or any sort of research project, you do want to make sure those are all individual level transactions. But for instance, if the rest of your transactions coming in were summed into the aggregate transaction, that is acceptable too. Yeah, so sort of touching base on the value of the two individual level transactions, what's really great about being able to track customers over time is that it's going to bring a level of, you know, evaluation of your market in terms of being able to, if you were to start using the app, record demographic information about who's coming to your market and how much they're spending. There's also just seeing, you know, how did someone's behavior change over time, or for instance, if you've created a new incentive program or some additional thing, watching that from an individual level perspective, you'd be able to do some analysis and maybe seeing how average transaction amounts change. At the same time, there are some markets that level of data is not necessarily something that they're interested in or they have the capacity to record, and that's why we've made it possible for markets who are not interested in having this finer level of detail, they are able to enter an aggregate transaction. And so what you would see then, you would still have per market day, and you'd be able to see how every single Saturday market across the 2015 year compared to each other. But you wouldn't it's a smaller level of detail than just having, for instance, the month or the year, but it allows still, for instance, when you run these reports, to be able to see a level of detail without committing volunteer staff in recording each individual level transaction, FMTrax ID, et cetera. Yeah, and we can, in addition to EBT, we can track credit card, we can track cash. Actually, what controls this is going on the profile page, where you'll be able to track, for instance, if anyone brought in a check, the FMP, Produce RX, and so it's really about customizing here what it is that you collect and what you plan on entering in FMTrax. But all of these are possible. So there, I do see a comment about this calendar here to be typable instead of choosing from the calendar, and so I will record that and bring that up to our developer. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. So being able to tab through. So basically pressing tab from customer ID to payment type. Again, I think that's a worthwhile idea, and I will pass that along. Sure. So Kathy Harrelson, would you mind retyping in your question with, I think, a little more clarity? Oh. Oh, so I'm sorry. The question was the page. So this is the profile page. For your market, this is going to include really all the essential information. So it starts with your market name, contacts, mailing address, location address. This days of operation is what allows the next section that we're going into, so post-market reports, is based on the days that you put here for operation. And you can see how you can specify your market season, or you can have it year-round. You're also able to customize which fields. So if you are collecting the last 4 digits of EBT cards, you'll want to make sure you have the point of sale ID checked so that you have a place to put it. Here you have your cash, check, or your different payment options. The incentive program is here. And just while I have you all looking at this, I just want to make a plug for our profile pages. We've been finding that there's been a lot of difficulty with the app if incentive information is entered incorrectly. And so here we have in our dummy market, this is actually supposed to be continued to be filled out, but it wasn't. And so we just need to remove this incentive so that our incentive information here is correct. This is a 100% matching program. If you had a discount program, you would switch it there. And you're allowed to put what your cap is and any accepted payment types. This is also where you would add additional volunteer emails. And so just because we changed the profile, we're going to go ahead and save the changes and go ahead. Sorry, one last question about individual transactions. And so I think it's a comment we've heard before about, yeah, okay, so it would be easier for me to put in individual transactions if the date can be entered one time per interaction with the app or timed out. And I think that's a really good point, that when people are entering, for instance, a lot of individual transactions, it is a lot easier if it would just stay on the 3rd. And since I definitely have been hearing that a lot, and we're getting towards the end of the season, I will talk to our developer about what options we have to making that easier for people entering a lot of transactions at once. Right, and so my colleague was pointing out to me, using the website, that is definitely a pain, and that is one of the reasons why when you are using the app at the market and you're able to forego bringing the records home and entering them all at once. Since you're entering it that day at the market, it knows the day and it doesn't ask you to continually enter it. So I know some of our markets have had success using a pen and paper system where they have the app at the market, and if they're able to put it in directly that day, they will, but if they can't, they go home and enter it, and so that might also be something for your markets to consider. All right, I have a question about the app in terms of when you're done entering transactions, the question is, how do we access finish day? Because that button is always generating an error message, and I have to log out in the website and submit information. And so the app works in a way where after you've entered your transactions for the day, there is a button that allows you to enter post-market questions. So how many vendors came to your market, for instance? And I think that the confusion comes that when I've used the app, I haven't had a situation where it is timing out. I would like to know more information about that. If you can forward that along to your program manager, any specific examples. But what I find the biggest confusion is that the words finish day signify, one, that you can't go back, and two, that you need to submit it at that moment. In that setting, if you should be able to submit it. Again, if you're having an actual problem where pressing submit is not occurring, please let us know. But otherwise, what it would normally say, it would pop up and say that you've submitted your answers. If you're connected to Wi-Fi, it tells you that it's completed. But either way, if there's ever an issue where you can't use it on the app, with the post-market questions, you do have a month. Really, this is showing 3 weeks because it's 28, just because that's the number of markets that fall within that time. But you do have a month if you are having problems using the app at the market. Sure. So there's a question about where can you find the information that you have entered. So when it comes to transactions, we have this transaction log, and so it is very clear to see this is all of the transactions that have been entered. But that's not always the format easiest to review, and if it's only 90 days, it's not complete. And that's where using the reports tabs will definitely be able to provide you with all of the raw data that has been entered. And so what's important to note here is that you can run a transaction report. You can run that for a market, you can run it for a network, you can run it for anything you're affiliated with by leaving it blank. And then by running it here, this is giving us just the transaction report. It's telling us distributed information. But because the post-market questions actually cover the redemption information, so how many vendors and how much SNAP was redeemed, those are, at this moment in time, coming out through a questions report. Just to clarify, from the questions report, again, you'll want to put a network or market. When you run the report, there won't be an infographic that comes. It's actually just a zip file that you can open a CSV with that will open in Excel. And again, I really recommend anyone, particularly if you're not familiar with Pivot in Excel or just have minimal Excel skills, coming to our webinar next month, we're going to give a lot of advice on how to take this raw data and put it in a format that is far more usable for grant writing and whatever reporting out to your funders that you need to do. All right, there is some feedback about wanting to run reports on specific markets, but not the entire network. I think we are in the process right now of changing our reports so that they are more usable, and we are in active development with that. So there's a lot of possibility for your feedback to help us make the website something more usable and easier to use. So I appreciate that comment, and it's possible it would involve some slight code change, but the idea of essentially being able to check the markets you wanted to run the report for, and I can see a follow-up about the possibility for that. Here's a question: do incentives redeemed versus transactions distributed appear in the transaction log? So right now, the website, since this is our very first beta test version of FMTracks, right now we do have redemption and distribution separated. We realized quickly that that was not ideal and are looking to essentially revamp the post-market questions to be more like the transaction tab. So whether that means you're able to view all of the post-market reports for your season and you can edit the information in them, or it's something more akin to the transaction log, where you can see everything that's been entered and you can edit and delete it. I think something along that might be coming very soon for FMTracks. In terms of seeing distributed and redeemed in comparison with each other, I think we're going to see that coming out through those infographics on the reports, since they do come in from very different sections of like the app, and we will make the website so that the information is coming in from more similar directions in terms of how the developers write the code. But what we'd like to see is on this, in addition to these 4 boxes, we would also see incentives distributed, incentives redeemed, and that maybe these can be in comparison to different colors on the bar graph so that you can see for a particular market day how distributed and redeemed compared, or by simply selecting a smaller time frame, I don't know if there's actually data on this, be able to compare the numbers easily. All right, we have a question about Florida markets, and the answer is that yes, Florida markets will be using FMTracks to submit their data to Wholesome Wave. Yeah, so I keep the questions coming, but we have handled a number of them, so I'm going to start moving through post-market reports. This is something else where, as I just mentioned, we're really gearing up to be in active development for this so that we have it ready for by the start of next season. And one of the, hopefully within the coming weeks, one of the changes that we're looking forward to is opening up so that we're not just looking at days for the last month. If you see here, we're basically looking at the 20th, the 27th, and the 3rd. So all of the Tuesdays or Saturdays, whichever day this market was, in the last 30 days. And I can't speak for certain what that is going to look like. As I mentioned, it might be that there's 100 more days. It could be a drop-down where you select the day. It could be a way where you can edit the information right there in your submission. Or it might be that you're submitting it a second time, but you're deleting the previous entry. So if at the moment you're currently holding on to a backlog of that information, I think the important thing to do is, one, keep it in preparation for entering it into FMTracks, but using that Excel information that you have to communicate for any reimbursements through Wholesome Wave that you plan on submitting until this functionality is available. If a market was canceled due to weather or holiday, or if there's simply a market report for a date that your market wasn't open, there isn't a consequence really for submitting it completely blank doesn't seem to really work, but the totals work in this way that by submitting just a single 0, the page has now gone away. And there is no problems for any market that is canceled. If you really just want to clean up this bar and get these to go away, that's all you would need to do is just enter a 0 and submit it. Otherwise, there shouldn't be any consequence of having this market appearing as a missing post-market report if you did not actually have a market. So there's a question about being able to find the reports that you've submitted. If you have submitted this information, either on the app or on the website, FMTracks is holding on to it. The question is really about where do you find that information? And that's where running a questions report is going to give you every single time you've submitted that question. In the same way, each row of the transaction report, or each row in the report for transactions will show you each transaction entered. This will show you each question. Just quickly open this up. I'm pulling open this Excel file so I can show it. It isn't showing up on your screen at the moment, but so really quickly, this is what the report is looking like for the post-market questions. You can actually see you see things like the market name, the date, here are the questions and their responses, as well as the customer ID. In this scenario, what we're looking at are new customer reports, so I'm going to go ahead and filter it. And what I'm doing, the builder doesn't show up, unfortunately, but I've pressed the filter button, so that's the funnel next to the sort icon. And then I've selected only post-market questions. You can see how the question type here just says post-market. Here we see how many total producers we're selling, the amount of SNAP, any other additional questions that were asked and that were filled out. I don't want to go too far into this. It will be a large part of our webinar next month, but this should be able to show you, for instance, all of the dates and for each market that you have filled it out. Okay, so again, the question, where is this found? So all I've done, there we go. So all I've done from the main dashboard is I've clicked on reports. I've run the report. And then I press this little export button. I think the GoToWebinar software doesn't necessarily show things that pop up between me pressing this button and the Excel document actually opening. Let me see if I do main screen like this, and I press export. You can see how it's downloading a zip file. My archive utility, which is something that's built into this computer to open zip files, will automatically convert that. It shows up in my downloads. This is a transaction report, but this is the questions report that I had just run. And when I click on it, it converts it to a CSV. And then I open the CSV file, which brings me to this Excel document. in order to save it as an Excel document, you just save as. A CSV and an Excel are very similar, but just for easier record keeping, probably best to save it as an Excel workbook. All right, so the question is, how can you access a market that is previous to the 30-day window that you have to enter data? I have all my manual data, but still need to enter it into FMTracks. We were having issues with using FMTracks at the market. What is the deadline to enter all of the season's data? And there's a few different pieces to that question. So, as I mentioned, I was informed by our developer that we should have the post-market questions opened up as either a drop-down of the entire season or the ability for them to show up here. And so for anyone who's holding on to the data that they can't currently enter, it is my understanding that you'll be able to do that within the month. In terms of getting all data into FMTracks, just for completing the data requirements of your agreement with Wholesome Wave, the market or the grant year is over in March, and so that is a deadline in terms of the final deadline for any from June through March 30th. Would need to have the data in by something I think middle of April. However, in terms of reimbursement, that information would need to be in FMTracks in order to be reimbursed for any redeemed information as we're going forward. Yeah, you'll definitely want to contact your program manager if you have any questions about your market-specific deadlines. In terms of, though, the missing post-market reports, we are aware that it is, our problem that the option to enter the data is there, and so, we're working as hard as we can to ensure that that option is open for you as soon as possible to give you ample time to enter that data. Okay, so this is a question for mobile markets, wondering, it's true, this post-market report is not applicable to a mobile market in this particular setting. For mobile markets, and this is actually will lead us into just talking about how your market can customize the data that's collected. What we're seeing here is a list of all of the post-market questions that are available for markets to include on their post-market reports. So, for instance, these questions are at the top are all specific to farmers markets, but when you keep scrolling down, you can see these questions: how many total farmers producers contributed to the CSA's share today? The next 5 questions are all related to CSAs. Similarly, scrolling down farther, we do see some questions about mobile markets. So how many total farmers contributed, and how many contributed fruits and vegetables? The mobile markets, as we've been working with them, are more akin to a retail environment than they are a farmer's market. And so essentially, you can see how a mobile market matching program, whatever I enter as the EBT distributed and the incentive distributed, because you're using it at that market that day, the same information is true for how much SNAP was redeemed. That would be, if it was truly the same as was distributed in tokens, it would be the same number. And the same goes for the amount of incentive distributed. If you're a mobile market, for instance, that has meat and eggs, we might be looking at a special, you might have an incentive program outside of Finney for all SNAP eligible purchases, and that amount would go here. Anything that was restricted to fruit and vegetable purchases, that the incentives that you distributed, you would put into this post-market question. So there's a question about the two questions. How many people do you estimate came to your farmer's market today, and what was the total head count for the day? The reason why you'll see these questions here is because we do have the ability to add new questions for any market that wants to add a question specific to their incentive program. And just because this is the first year, that process of approving the questions, in addition to some research projects that we were working on, allowed for some additional questions to come on board, which of course are optional, like this: what is the total head count for the day? And so there really isn't a difference for it. It's that someone had requested this question, and that's why it's here. But note that because these are all optional, you would only need to answer one if you wanted to collect information on that. So you might be just click how many people do you estimate came to the farmer's market today, and not click the question on the total head count. I think going into the 2016 grant year, we'll have learned lessons about the question approval process, and we'll have either minimized the number of questions here or found some way to group them so that it's not such an overwhelming list of questions to choose from. Mm-hmm. All right, so in terms of using FM Tracks with a wireless connection, if you had Wi-Fi at your market, you are able to use either the app or the website. Actually, if you don't have Wi-Fi at your market, you're also able to use the app and the website. And that's because the app will save data until you connect to the internet. And in terms of the website, what we're looking at mostly are people that have recorded pen and paper transactions and are now going back and entering the website either at their office or their home. One thing we're working on right now is the ability to use FM Tracks on a smartphone. And so this would be, it would require someone having data if you did not have Wi-Fi. And so that could have some additional costs incurred to yourself or your volunteers. And so that is a decision, for each market to think about. But it is possible to go to access.fmtracks.org on your smartphone and enter manual entry right there at the market. You'll use the data, it'll connect to the system. So that is an option. What we are hoping to develop in the coming months is a mobile site that is more similar to the app that would allow you to, in addition to entering that information, also have the repeat customer questions being asked, so that if you are collecting that information on individual level transactions, you can use the iPhone at the market or another smartphone to be able to do that.
Hi, sorry, this is Ava. I'm just taking everyone's questions. I just want to clarify, what you're looking at currently is the website. You are not looking at the app. The app is available on an iPad, and you don't need Wi-Fi to use the app on an iPad at the market. You do need Wi-Fi to connect eventually so that you can upload your data from the app to the website. The website requires Wi-Fi or some sort of internet connection, and you can use that off-site or on-site with your iPad if you want to connect to the internet with your iPad at the market. But ideally, at the market, you'll be using your iPad to use the app. You don't have to use the website at the market. The website is designed for people who don't have access to iPads.
So in terms of accessing the website on your phone, it's the same website that you would access on your computer. So right now, fmtracks.org or access.fmtracks.org is the website. And as I mentioned, in the coming months, we're hoping to make that have more functionality. But right now, it is just the exact same form of this website, but on your Safari browser on your phone, for instance. So there's a question. When I started to enter data, I chose system. I now use market. I've edited the boxes, but it still shows up in a muted color. Will that be changed? I think I just need a little clarification. Is that a network? Oh, I see. Okay. So the question categories: system, network, market. So the reason why it shows up in a muted color is that I, as the network administrator, you'd think I would be able to select it. It's showing a no symbol, but I am able to, from my dashboard view, I'm able to select system. And what this means is that every single person who uses FMTracks will get these questions pushed out to them. What you guys are looking at as network or market managers is that you're looking to customize just your market or just your network. And so if you were, instead of, I'm in market view right now of our dummy market collard greens, and so I can select to add questions to my market. If I wanted to go to the network, our dummy network, I can have the ability to add questions to the network. And what this is going to do is this is going to push these questions out to every single market within my network. Yeah, just a question about whether or not you need a hotspot for the iPad. The iPad works without wireless connection. The only thing that you need to make sure you do is go home or go back to the office and connect it to the internet. But the app will save all data that has been entered correctly until all you need to do is log out, connect it to the internet, and it will sync. You want to make sure you don't go, for instance, an extended period of time without doing that because your data won't be showing up on the website. You might have someone who's looking for that data thinking it's not entered. Additionally, if you were to use the same iPad at multiple markets and you took the iPad to the next market and you switched without logging out, you might have the potential to lose or alter that data because it is meant to be logged off after each session and synced to the website using Wi-Fi, ideally within a day, just so that it is available online. And then, of course, you'd want to sync back in prior to the market in case any other changes. For instance, maybe something on your profile has been updated, maybe a network manager has selected additional questions, or we're pushing out different repeat user questions. So you'll usually want to sync within a day of the market and a day after, or the day before the market, but you do not need access to the internet during the market. All right, I think that we are getting ready to wrap things up. So I do want to provide one opportunity now. If you had any last questions, feel free to send them now. Of course, you can also follow up with your program managers, and they'll be tremendous resources. Additionally, as I had mentioned before, several times perhaps, we are having, sorry. We are having more tutorials specifically for reporting, but also these office hours. So you'll see 3 dates here listed, 2 in the afternoon, 1 in the morning. And this is an opportunity, you got the data, you want to enter it. We will be on GoToMeeting. We will be there to answer any questions. We'll be screen sharing. You can screen share with us so that we can see what you're looking at. And together we can just answer all the questions right there without having to go through chains of emails or screenshots. So please, if you are thinking that you're going to be entering a backlog of data and you want to do it either at the same time as your, one of these office hours or just prior to one of these office hours, so you can come with us with any questions, myself and Elizabeth Atwell will be available. And you'll see here, this is just the link to get in, but you can also click on that from the email that we'll be sending out afterwards. So anyone who's looking for the app in the Apple App Store, what you want to do is just search FM Tracks, just as it's spelled here. You won't find this in an iPhone app store because it is not available as an iPhone app. It is just available on tablets. And it should be about the third or fourth one that comes up. There are a couple radio apps that come up, but it should be there. So just spelled like that, FM Tracks. All right, I think that might be wrapping up all of the questions that we have. Again, here is my email, and then I'm also just including this link where you might want to check out our frequently asked questions and video tutorials. That link is also going to be in the email that we're sending out. So I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.